Hi there, welcome to the Teeny Tinkers channel. I make ball jointed doll and craft related content. The time has come. The end is nigh. Okay, but in reality, I have been working on my clay doll Polly for 7 months now, 8 months, a really long time. And I'm gonna be honest, I didn't work on her solidly the whole time. I feel like that's pretty obvious. And I'll be honest, this video actually took 2 times to 3 times longer to film than all of the other videos. The past parts, like putting her head together, making her body, making her limbs, refining her, those all took about 1 to 4 days to complete. But girl, or boy, or everybody, I started this video, the smoothing and refining, absolutely 3 weeks ago. But she is done, complete, finished. And she's right here. You really thought I was gonna show her to you at the beginning of the video? All right, let's get into the process of actually finishing the clay BJD. And also, I'm just asking here at the beginning of the video because my YouTube dashboard told me I should. But if you like doll content and you like watching ball jointed dolls be made, customized, just things like that, go ahead and give this video a like and also a subscribe. I would really love to see the channel at 10,000 by the end of the year. I know that's probably a pretty lofty goal, and I know maybe you don't really care about my goals, but I might be planning up a pretty sweet giveaway if we can hit 10,000 by the end of the year. So, but that's enough of me talking. Let's go finish Polly. So while I was pulling out the materials to finish Polly, I did come across Hollow's first version. I thought it would be fun to show them side by side so you could see how far my clay sculpting has actually come. This first version is rough. I mean, the joints did not fit together, everything is pretty rough and misshapen. None of it makes sense and the posability is extremely limited. I am still pretty happy with her for being the very first ball jointed doll I ever sculpted, but I have to say, Polly's progress is so much better. Sculpting a clay doll is completely different, but also kind of the same as sculpting a 3D printed doll. I really want to talk about this more in a future video, but for now, I just thought I would show where Polly's at the end of her sculpting. From now, we're going to take it to the next step, which is smoothing her out and making sure the joints fit together absolutely beautifully, kind of a continuation from the last video. So let's do that. This time, we're going to be taking a step away from polymer clay and switching to La Doll paper clay. I've also got some silicone tools and some paint brushes, and have some water on hand. This is super important for smoothing. I also have a craft knife because before I get started, it's time to chisel away a little bit of the extra. There are some extra lumps and bumps that I'm seeing now that she's put back together. I really want to make sure that the body lines are really nice and smooth and continuous. This means that the line from her hip should come all the way down and meet where her thigh starts. No weird, jagged bits or parts that don't sit together properly. This is also true of the elbows and the waist and all the other places where the joints meet. While the pieces are basically the same height, I do have to make sure that the sockets also kind of fit the same, because if they don't, this will adjust the actual height of one leg over the other, which can cause things like not being able to stand or not being able to have equal posing on both sides. That's why you see me chipping things away. I'm really just trying to get things to fit together, because honestly, she doesn't quite stand at this point, and I really need her to be able to. At this point, I'm realizing that part of the reason she doesn't stand is that her feet are simply too small. Polymer clay is much heavier than paper clay. So, for example, Polly, as the clay version, weighs about 3 or 4 times as much as Hollow's clay version does. So she really needs to have really sturdy joints and feet in order to be able to stand on her own. I think I've got the joints about the same here, so I'm going to unstring her and then do any further smoothing and scraping away with individual pieces and not it connected as a whole. Having it connected is really great for when you're working on body lines, but it does make it a lot scarier and more difficult to chip things away.
Alright, you're gonna have to excuse many outfit changes during this video. This was, as I mentioned, filmed over 3 weeks. So here I am scraping more away from the thighs to ensure the most symmetrical look possible. I'm going to do this again to all the parts. One thing to know is there's going to be some repetition in this video. The finishing stages of making a clay ball jointed doll really are repetitive. It is so many sessions of adding clay, taking it away, scraping it off, sanding it, adding more clay, and we did this a lot with polymer clay already, but here we're going to be doing it with paper clay, but that's coming up. Alright, so this is where I'm still trying to fix the feet. I was so sure that I could smooth them away and make them stand. In the end, I ended up making them bigger and they stand perfectly well. Rare shot of me wearing my glasses. I'm actually wearing my glasses in a lot of the process videos. They provide some protection against flicking clay, and having all the clay flicking around actually dries my eyes out a little bit, so we're going to be seeing a lot of this. I just do some last finishing touches before I get started on smoothing. Okay, this is why I had the water. So I take a really small piece of the lead doll paper clay, packing the rest up in saran wrap so that it doesn't dry out. Super important. This clay is pretty expensive, and if it dries out, it's a sad day. I add a 50-50 ratio of water and clay and mush them together as best I can. There will of course be some pulp because unlike a stone clay or something like that, it is kind of paper pulp, so it's kind of chunky anyways. I smoosh this around with my fingers, and then once it's thoroughly spread out, I go ahead with a wet brush and really kind of paint the clay on. This seems maybe a little weird, but in the end, it gets all of that clay into all the creases and bumps and lumps and just makes it a much smoother doll. Okay, adding a ridge to the waist again because every time I even out this waist, we get more of a gap. I'm constantly going through the process of making this gap, filling it in, refitting it. I think this is the 3rd or 4th time, and that's just since making the waist and doing the initial smoothing video. I also noticed her booty was a bit flat, so let's round that bad boy out. This also makes her waistline and her back arch look really nice. This silicone tool is actually meant to spread face masks on your face, but because it's so flat, it provides a really nice flat finish to the chest. This becomes really evident in the later stages. I love this tool for this, but it only really works on pieces that have long planes, like the chest and the thighs. I have to say though, this stuff gets freaking everywhere and it dries your hands out really bad. I have never put on so much lotion on my hands. But here's how she was looking after her first session. I left her overnight to dry and I came back the next day for her first sanding round. Okay, so most of the videos in the sanding sections are going to be sped up. It honestly takes so long to sand. I literally sat and watched movies for hours and hours and hours to sand. As well, I really should have been wearing a respirator. I wear respirators when I sand basically anything resin or anything I would consider toxic, but clay dust is no joke, and I started sneezing after this session, so I definitely started wearing my respirator every time I sanded inside. I did wear gloves because last time I sanded without gloves, I got cracked hands, and that's really not a good time. To sand, I used my wet dry sanding sponges, and I had to use them on the dry only. Typically, I prefer to wet sand, and that's because when you use a wet sanding sponge, it catches a lot of the dust, and that's really good for somebody like me who often has to sand inside. However, because I am now working with paper clay, wet sanding is not an option, and we just have to deal with the dust. My entire office is absolutely going to need to be dusted at this point, which is going to be such chaos. I ended the sanding session by going over the entire doll with a melamine sponge. I just wanted to see how smooth it had actually gotten. And then it was time for more clay. This is the second session with the paper clay, and I'm seeing a lot of improvements, but I know that I am going to have to fill in yet more gaps and even things out. Like this lump on the head, I didn't notice. Every single time I sand and add clay, I have to recheck the joint fit and make sure everything still fits together. Adding too much clay or taking too much away is going to result in the joints not working as they were designed, and that would be a problem. I don't know why I spent so much time trying to fix these feet because, like, I'm just going to sculpt over them in 10 seconds anyways, but I thought refining the toes was a good idea. I did spend some time scraping away extra and carving out the hands though, before once again going in with the wet, soggy paper clay. Doesn't that look beautiful? And spreading it out again. What did I say about repetition? Here we are, repeating the same things over and over. I did absolutely notice that this go around, things were definitely spreading easier. I felt like I didn't have to fill in as many gaps and holes, and things were just, in general, looking better. That's the idea with this, is with clay dolls, with any dolls really, you can't rush the finishing steps. There is a lot of love and labor put into every single ball jointed doll. It doesn't matter how it's sculpted, it really does take a lot of time and effort and waiting in between steps. This can be waiting for clay to dry, or it can be waiting to come back and look at the project with fresh eyes. Staring at a doll on a screen for a very long time does result in not noticing imperfections. Kind of like if you're trying to read over an essay the night it's due. Although I haven't written an essay in years, so I don't know why that was the comparison that came to mind. With every bit of clay added, with every brush stroke, with every sanding session, she is coming more and more to life. She went from being a concept and a lump of clay, a bunch of straws, some metal wire, and she's becoming a real doll. And I have to say, that's really exciting. Learning how to make dolls is so much effort, and it does take a lot of time. There's absolutely a learning curve, but in the end, it is so worth it to see your own ideas and creations come to life. Speaking of your own creations, let's take a minute from the video and check out the Doll of the Week. This week's Doll of the Week comes from our giveaway winner for my last giveaway of the Custom Soleil, and that is Ghost Dolls over on Instagram. She has been sharing so many super cute photos of her witchy Soleil, and honestly, these are perfect for this time of year, and I'm so happy to see them and that she's in a home that loves her. Thank you so much, Ghost Dolls, for not only subscribing, entering the giveaway, but for also sharing all these adorable photos so I can keep up with you and your dolls. Alright, if you would like to be considered for Doll of the Week, over on Instagram, share photos of your Teeny Tinker sculpts, and please don't forget to tag at Teeny Tinkers wherever possible. Instagram only lets me see the top posts in a hashtag, so it's getting harder and harder to find pictures of your Teeny Tinkers dolls. This is another reason I'm considering a Discord, but for now, I would really love if you tagged me. Alright, let's go back to the video and finish Polly. So later that night, after about 5 hours of dry time, I went ahead and gave her another sand. I was so optimistic, staring at this for hours and thinking, wow, I think this is it. I think she's finally smooth enough to start adding primer. Only, when I came down the next morning, that was not the case. While the fit was generally better, I knew that I would need to sand her some more. But this time I decided to string her up roughly so that I could sand her smoother and again improve the body line and check the joint fit. I'm really happy with the head mobility. I think this peanut on the neck was definitely the right call. She also has a really good range of motion with her hands and her arms, as well as leaning forward and backwards. Though she is a little top heavy when you do that, so she might fall. Also, I didn't show this part on camera, I'm not sure why, but these are her bigger feet and they are the reason she can stand now. But I'm very pleased she can. Also, this didn't translate on the video, but it was in the morning. I did add more clay and then sand her again and then lay her out, just so you know why she's not strung here and why I had to restring her. Alright, all strung up and time to sand. This time lapse again goes over about an hour. It was much easier to sand her in this position, and like I said, paper clay sands really well. But do you see all the dust everywhere? Oh my gosh, look at her sweet little face. I love her so much. I cannot. All right, time to unstring her again. I've been trying to string her in a way where I don't have to waste elastic every time I string her, because I have done so many test stringings over this course of making her. Using a towel, I wipe off extra clay because it makes it a lot easier to smooth things out. But everyone, I am so excited because it is finally time for primer. Let's go. So the first layer of primer goes on really thick, and I don't usually care if it's a little bit sloppy. So I'm doing the stringing up method. This is something I've done for my resin ball jointed dolls when I finish them, but this is my first time doing it with a clay doll. So how this works is I basically broke up pieces of bamboo skewers, which I got from the dollar store, and used garden twine, which I actually don't recommend for this. I would definitely say use a heavy embroidery thread or something like a yarn that isn't fuzzy. The fuzzies kind of got stuck a little bit into the pieces once the primer was on, and while they sanded off, it was not super ideal. So for a better finish, don't use this. But once I got all the pieces strung up on a loop, so one piece on each end, I went ahead and kind of slung them over the twine I had hung earlier. I just sort of tied this up between my garden gate and my lawnmower, so that's what's holding this up right now. All right, here's all the pieces. I trim off the extra because, again, I noticed that the twine was touching in some spots. Typically, I use something called Rust-Oleum primer filler for this, and the store didn't have that when I went, so I got this other brand, Duplicolor. I'm gonna say this is not my favorite. I definitely prefer the Rust-Oleum. We had a problem. I noticed it was taking a little long to dry, so I checked the can and it said you shouldn't use this above 70% humidity, and guess what it was that day? This was kind of a bummer, to be honest, but it worked out okay because, again, it's the first layer and you're sanding a lot of the primer off in the first layer anyways. So I sanded outside once I had the primer on. The weather was kind of nice some days, and honestly, it was just way easier to do it outside. I really didn't want to clean primer flecks for my whole yard. Once I got it sanded smooth and the sun came out and the humidity went down, I went in with a second layer of the same gray primer. Then I had to leave it to dry until the next day. So for the next few days, I basically hung out outside on my deck / hung out in TikTok lives, just sanding and chit-chatting with people. On the third round of primer, which was a half can that I had left over, I got all these horrible bubbles and I was so bummed out. I had to basically sand it down to the next level and then add a new primer on top, which is where we see this terracotta color. I literally put this on so thick because I knew that I'd be able to sand it off and then get it basically to exactly where I wanted. For this last round of sanding, I used only my finer sanding sponges, but I did also have to crack out a craft knife and scrape out some of the details. As well, I finished with both a melamine sponge as well as a microfiber cloth. The microfiber cloth basically gives it a little bit of a polish and then just cleans off the dust really well. But she's not staying this terracotta color. Let's spray paint her pink and then take a look at her all done. To say I'm excited is an understatement. Okay, so here's how she came out. Unfortunately, as I spray painted her, it came out extremely glossy and I ended up having to sort of buff her out with a magic eraser anyways. Unfortunately, as I strung her, the bar snapped out of her foot. I don't know why this happened this time and not the other times, but it was really sad. I would also like to note that all the dents you're seeing on the joints are coming from me posing her and playing with her. So here she is next to Hollow, just so you can see again the finished before and after. Tell me there is not growth and improvement here. I dare you. Okay, but seriously, she is super cute. I had wanted to make a follow-up video customizing her, but guys, I don't think her little body can handle it. I don't think I dare to put any paint on her face I'd need to remove. So I gave her a quick dress up in some stuff I had, and she looks really cute. Oh my gosh. But I did add a little teensy bit of chalk pastel to her face just to give it a little bit of life. I'm too nervous to give her a full face up because if I mess it up, I can't remove it. It would pull off the paint and primer. So for now, this is how she's going to look, I guess. But oh my gosh, she is such a baby. All right, so I obviously am beyond smitten with how she came out. Obviously, there were some small issues with her being painted and primered and me still trying to string her and pose her. Typically, after the last primer layer, when you sanded it, that would be it, and they would go to the caster. I had fully planned on completely, like, really styling her, like big face up, big eyelashes, but honestly, I am too terrified to do so. I don't think she's going to be for play. She's actually on this stand, and I think she's going to, this is just how she's going to look. However, I have fully fallen in love with her, and I am going to be 3D sculpting her. But after that, I think I'm going to print her in pink and maybe style that. So let me know what you think of that. All right, if you're already subscribed to my channel, thanks so much for subscribing and being part of the hopefully 10,000 by the end of the year. If you are new and you liked this video, I have so many like it. Please check them out. There's a whole playlist of ball jointed doll sculpting and finishing. And yeah, if that's something that interests you, I definitely think you should give her a look. As always, I hope you have a fantastic day.